I have decided to replay Fallout 4, not only the main story, but also all of the DLCs and expansions that come along with it. This is very different to the type of content I normally make, but I wanted to share the experience, the journey of replaying this game, because it was so controversial when it first came out, and now it's actually really good. So, before we dive in, it's worth noting that there are no mods throughout my entire playthrough here. It's just vanilla game, DLC, and a couple of Creation Club bits, mostly aesthetic things like a husky. And naturally there are going to be spoilers because we're going to be playing through every single element of this game, but there is your heads up and your spoiler warning. Now, let's dive in to Fallout 4. So when I started playing this game, it was actually before the 2024 update, which changed a lot of things. And one thing I will say is that before the update, the loading times took so long, so much longer than I remember. And I was playing this on the PS5, so I was expecting some crazy fast SSD level. Nah, it was a long time. Okay. One thing I had forgotten about was how cool the intro cinematic was. War never changes. I've never actually properly looked into it, but does anybody know if this is like a 3D render or if this was like shot in live action, because it's so beautiful. Character customization started and in typical fashion, it took quite a while, but I feel like I actually made the character look a lot like me, bald and everything, and look at this dude, huh? He beautiful. My goal was to go for like a stealthy sniper kind of build, but I also wanted quite a bit of carry weight, so here are the stats that I ended up choosing. Also, has anybody noticed that like Shaun's little mobile thing, it's got a really weird hitbox? It's so hard to like click the right thing. Yeah. As I progressed through the opening act, it was so strange because like all the memories from, I don't know, 2017 or something came flooding back to me whenever I first played this game on release. I actually had completely forgotten about the death of Nora, the kid's mother, your wife, and even little bits of voice acting like this right here.
Come on! There has to be a release! Come on, come on, come on! Oh God!
It really solidified the fact that this is a game that Bethesda had poured their heart and soul into. They had hired the right people, and it's going to be one hell of a journey. Even tiny little details like you can actually take the wedding ring and add it to your inventory from your wife who has passed away. Little details like that, man, it really makes a difference. We finally escaped the vault, and there is just so much lore straight from the start. Like you've got terminals you can go into, you can learn about the history of what happened in the vaults and start like piecing things together. You break out of the vault and all of a sudden you've got a couple of missions from the Creation Club coming at you. You've got the option, do you go to Sanctuary, do you go to Red Rocket, do you go straight to Concord? Like there is so much to do, and it's just you give him free will. Even like this little layer of dust. Okay, talking about details, this layer of dust on the Pip-Boy, at the time that this game came out, like that should not have been possible. I will say that the gunplay felt really weird at first. It took a long time to get used to. I don't know if that's me comparing it to modern games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, or even modern Bethesda games like Starfield, but it felt very strange. There was no like aim assist. I think we're definitely treated in this day and age in terms of how much the game actually helps you. I don't know, it's a little observation I figured I'd point out. Oh, there's actually harvestable items. I don't think I've ever even used these. Returning home, you meet Codsworth again, and again, it's just all part of the lore. You learn how much time has passed. And the voice acting, like there's a little bit right here. How do you polish rust?
And the car! The car! How do you polish rust?
Man, what great voice acting this game had. I helped Codsworth around town for a little bit, clearing out some bugs, and then he pointed me in the direction of Concord. I actually advised against doing this in my early Let's Play guide, which you're more than welcome to go and check out. There'll be a link in the description and one on screen now. But I wanted to replay the game traditionally, you know? Along the way, we found Dogmeat, and I never actually realized his name is Dog until you start talking to Mama Murphy, and then he gets the name Dogmeat. Also, does anybody know if this is the same Dogmeat from the Fallout show? I don't think it would be, because like the Fallout show is set in the future, so I'm confused in terms of timelines. Another little observation was the fact that Red Rocket actually has all of the workshops that you need super early, and it's again interesting how the game developers knew you were going to take this path and set you up a little place that you could call home super early in the game. After arriving in Concord, we took down a couple of raiders, met the Minutemen, even though I was wearing a really dumb outfit. Like I gotta check this stuff before recording footage. I started hacking away like Neo from the Matrix, trying to get into this weird thing to get the fusion core, and to this day I refuse to hack properly in this game. I'm just hitting random words and hoping for the best. But either way, we got the fusion core, put it in the power armor, took down the Deathclaw, and then we were ready to head to Sanctuary with the Minutemen. And there were lots of awkward interactions along the way.
No, I haven't run across any kidnapped babies. I'll definitely keep an eye out for him. Anyway, I am glad you're here.
From this point onwards, I kinda just wanted to explore, so I took Dogmeat back to Vault 111, and I used the Crylator glitch, which again, there'll be a link in the description if you're interested in glitches in Fallout 4. I made like a huge compilation, putting every single working glitch into one video for you, so check it out, it's really helpful. I found my first ever Nuka-Cola Quantum, and I gave Dogmeat a red bandana. Now he's looking good, baby. Sounds weird saying that about a dog. I mean, he looks cool. How do I ruined this voiceover already. I ventured into the sewers where the Deathclaw came from, an area that I'd never been to before, and I saw this like giant crab thing, and this was scary because I didn't know how to handle this situation. So I decided to back out of that and go straight to Diamond City because I was already over encumbered and I was walking like a fucking snail. I passed through Starlight Valley, taking out a bunch of mole rats, and then I had to pass through Lexington, avoiding the railers, but still having my first fight with a couple of ghouls. I nearly died through a couple of explosions, but you know what? We did it. We got past everything, and then I actually bumped into Paladin Dance, who I have never spoken to before. I don't think I've ever even done the Brotherhood of Steel questline, so maybe that's something we'll do later on. I ran into a synth fighting a human version of himself, and I just kind of let them fight to the death. I didn't want to pick sides, not that it has any implications, but like this isn't my issue. Like, you guys just battle it out and may the best man win. I took out a ship full of raiders, one of which was in a power armor suit, so I felt really good about myself. And then I was fully over encumbered all the way to Diamond City, and this trip was just, it was agonizing. After getting sucked into a fight with super mutants, I finally arrived in Diamond City, and it kind of occurred to me at this point how well Bethesda had introduced me to so many mechanics, enemies, and items this early through one simple trip. And this is the path that I suppose you're meant to take normally. And just along this one trip, this one little route that I decided to take, I've encountered nearly every single major enemy type in the game. I understand how combat mechanics works, I understand about survival and rads and things like that, and this is why I love Bethesda games, because they don't hold your hand, they just trust that you are smart enough to be able to figure things out. While in Diamond City, I modified a bunch of weapons, sold all of my unnecessary gear, and then started my first main quest line. I suppose it's a side quest, but either way, I joined the Railroad, and there's a very good reason: the Ballistic Weave. I think the hardest part about starting the Railroad questline is like you actually have to find the starting point by following this weird little trail. So I decided to start by discovering Swan. He's like a unique mini-boss within the game. He's got a really cool drop, but that led to a lot of dying again and again and again. Eventually, I beat him. I started following the path, the red line that took me to the Railroad, and then I died to a legendary dog, and that put me back to before I defeated Swan, and then I had a mental breakdown, but everything's fine. I finally sprinted to the church, met the Railroad, and completed the first couple of quests within the Railroad questline, which were very fetchy. The theme was covert ops. You're meant to be sneaking around and doing things, but I felt more like an errand boy. I was just placing little objects atop towers and things like that. It wasn't all that great, but it all paid off because I finally brought my first home in Diamond City, a cute little place that I didn't realize you couldn't actually connect it to any of your other settlements, so now I just have all of my resources in one silly place. I unlocked the Ballistic Weave, and then I realized I actually needed to keep leveling up to use it, so I completed the Harbour DLC. This was one I was super excited about because I'd heard a lot about it, but back in the day, I had never actually played the entire thing. I think I visited the island, realized it was all foggy and stuff, and then I was like, nah, this is scary, let's not do this. But I started by completing the Nick Valentine missions, which are compulsory. That led me to taking down Kellogg, which again is part of the main story, something that I like this little bit right here. I love this.
You murdering, kidnapping psychopath! Give me my son! Give me Shaun! Now!
Haven't you been paying attention? You don't find the Institute. The Institute finds you. You open the closet, it's just a closet. You can never find the monster that hides inside. Not until it jumps out at you.
And then at last I returned to Diamond City and began the DLC. I had no idea what I was getting myself in for, but I knew it was going to be one hell of a ride. This is the most acclaimed DLC in the Fallout series, if not ever made by Bethesda, so I had high expectations. As soon as you start the DLC, you're really thrown into the investigator role, learning more about every single character you interact with. The whole introduction to this DLC was just so great. You sail to this new island, Far Harbor, and it's fogged out. You can't see anything. You don't know what's going on. You're thrown straight into this great intro mission where there's new enemies and new characters showing up every couple of seconds. There's brand new weapons like the harpoon gun, the bear trap, and the meat hook. And these weren't like average little weapons. These were good guns at any point in the game, and I was still early, so like this was a treasure trove for me. After a few side quests, I was ready to hunt down something called a fog crawler, and this thing was fucking huge. But then on the way home, I ran into this legendary and a glowing gulper, and I didn't stand a chance, man. I was bait. There are a bunch of other super powerful beasties like the Mirelurk Queen. That was a fun one. And don't even get me started on the legendary, the most terrifying enemy of the Far Harbor DLC, the Red Death.
Think we can handle it? We could always call in the Marines.
Oh, ha ha.
Overall, the DLC was packed with a bunch of side quests that went on for a while, but they were all incredibly rewarding. There was just so much lore packed into every single side quest, every single character, and then there was the main quest itself, meeting Dima and learning more about Nick Valentine's backstory. And here's a question, right? I voluntarily chose to bring Nick with me. What would have happened if I hadn't have brought Nick as a companion at that point? Would I have learned about him? Would he have been able to rebuild certain elements of his character? There's so many questions. I ended up finding Kasumi, and that's what the whole DLC revolves around. It's finding her, bringing her back home, and then you really start digging deeper into the lore of the island, and you realize there's so many mysteries and backstories to unfold, even outside of the lore. I'm actually not going to spoil everything. I'm not going to give you all the intricate details of how the DLC worked, but I must have spent at least 20 hours just on the Far Harbor DLC alone, and there are just so many missions. And there's this memory mission. Apparently, everybody hated these missions, and I kind of liked them, to be honest. They were wacky and way outside of anything I'd experienced in the Bethesda game, but they were still pretty fun. And then finally, to wrap up Far Harbor, there are multiple endings, right? And they're not like little things, they are things that will have huge implications for the rest of your gameplay. And I chose the good one, but you also have an option to become a complete psychopath, murdering thousands, which is nice. I mean, you have the option to live out your dreams as a crazy serial killer. Kasumi, in my playthrough, makes it home safe and sound, and all is right in the world. At this point in the game, I had played for over 30 hours, and I had loved every single minute of it. I was a little bit curious why the weights started lifting themselves and why Nick was sneaking into my frame even though he wasn't a companion at the time. Some of the Far Harbor spookiness had worked its way into the Commonwealth. It was time for another breather, and by breather I mean randomly exploring different elements of the wasteland, completing a couple of side quests. I found a kid in a fridge, something that I definitely need to try out in real life. I do have 3 kids, so Logan, come here, mate. I need to try something, it's for a video. I found an awesome Creation Club weapon, became besties with Nick, and helped to rebuild Vault 11, which was actually going to become my main home, my hub in the future. And this was one of the DLCs, by the way, another one that I hadn't really experienced. And the fact that you can build an entire vault is kind of crazy, but the fact that your settlement size limit kind of limits you actually being able to build anything, that was kind of annoying. I do miss that mod that removed the settlement limit. Then finally, it was time for the Automatron DLC. Now, this one I was familiar with, and it was time to start saving the world with Ada and learning more about the Mechanist. After taking down a bunch of rogue robots, Ada instructed me to make a robot workbench. I built one in my new custom-made vault, and then I was instructed to tear down a few more robots in order to hunt down the Mechanist. Instead of doing that, I decided to sit and talk with a brain in a box, and yeah, We took down this giant robot thing though, which is pretty cool. I then built a body for the brain in the box, and I pimped Ada out in the process, and we look like a badass couple. Stormed the Mechanist lair, opened a sealed room locked tighter than a nun's nether regions, and defeated the Mechanist, who actually turned out to be a half-decent person. She eventually joined our cause and swore to fix the mistakes of her past. Granted, this was a very fast DLC in terms of story, and the ending was kind of lackluster, but all of the elements and the things you unlock along the way, like being able to build your own little army of robots, that was a really cool addition. Next up was the Nuka-World DLC, the last stop in our story before we hit the main quest. I tuned the radio, rushed straight to the source, ready to take on the final DLC that Fallout had to offer, and I died. This was going to be about a long one, I could tell already. I met Harvey, and he had a plan to kill me too, but we worked it out. We became best buddies. And with that, we were off to Nuka-World, and oh damn, we were thrown straight into an arena contest, fighting for our lives, and getting through the maze was pretty fun, but just before the main event, a haunted intercom started talking to me. And I swear to God, this was the intercom. It wasn't the usual voices that just sit and talk to me when I'm alone. You guys get that too, right? The chap talking to me was Gage, and he gave me a secret to winning, and win we did. Not without difficulties, mind you, but we made it. After getting a breakdown of how things worked in Nuka-World, I got my first look at the new map, and holy shit, it's huge! Like, dude, there was a cafe, a market, an arcade, and a bunch of other stuff, and that's just on the walk to the first destination. The arcade was particularly distracting. Now, the first few hours of Nuka-World were spent getting to know the gangs, doing a couple of side missions, and trying to be a decent human being. I have heard complaints about this one that, like, if you choose to do the actual DLC as it's meant to be done, you are choosing to become the bad guy, and if you choose not to do that, then you miss out on a bunch of cool stuff. I kinda get it, but I also want to experience everything this game has to offer. I even ran into a bunch of crazy cultists who had not been explained to me, or at least I wasn't paying attention at this point in the story. We took down a crazy mech, and then we tried to steal a spaceship, and the spaceship ride itself was really trippy, especially when I was ill and I was drugged up on cough medicine. I am a hardcore mother trucker. It got to the point where the amount of quest markers got really overwhelming really quickly, especially given the size of everything, and obviously these can be toggled on or off, but like, damn, that's a lot of stuff to do. After defeating all of the gated claws, meeting a man raised by gorillas, and claiming multiple locations for the gangs, I decided to be rid of the disciples because they're a little bit, fucked up in the head. Wrapping up the final DLC on the list. The missions were fun, albeit a little bit repetitive, and I don't think I've encountered and explored half of what the DLC has to offer, but I do want to get this video out at some point this year, so it's time to wrap things up. It was around about this time that the new update had been added, so I took a little bit of time, like 20 hours, completing as much of the game as possible, while also being mindful that I had put nearly 100 hours into this game and I should probably wrap things up. I started playing through some of the new Enclave missions that were added with the DLC Creation Club update thing, and I actually bumped into Virgil, who we would need for a later story mission. I tore through a forge of bad guys, saved Kate's life, took on some more bad guys, unlocked my own penthouse apartment, and then finally, after over 100 hours of gameplay, it was time to bring the story to an end. Holy shit, this voiceover is 20 minutes already. What? Oh god, this is going to be like one of my longest videos ever. I don't think anybody's going to watch this. After many hours, I returned to Paladin Dance and decided to play through the Brotherhood of Steel questline for the first time ever. Honestly, it was really sweet of him to wait here for me for God knows how many hours. Along the way, I thought me and Kate had a thing, as she was hinting at it, but no, I just got friend zoned. Jesus, even in video games, the rejection is real.
Look me in the eyes and tell me you feel something too.
Of course I do. I'm in love with you, Kate.
You're what? I can't.
After taking out a couple of synths and getting incinerated by a jet engine, I got to ride on a vertibird for the first time, and this was so freaking cool. I met Maxon, and I started getting a couple of doubts about the Brotherhood. Like, okay, they're really cool, and they've got a big ship and power armor suits and stuff, but I just didn't like that they were so against synths. But you know what? I had started along this path. I might as well just kind of pursue it for a bit and see where it goes. Then there was this line right here.
Have you ever had sexual relations with any species considered non-human?
There was this one really ugly girl in college. I mean, I had to get drunk, and it was a dare, and
That hardly qualifies.
The Brotherhood continued to be just as awesome. We took out this giant behemoth super mutant thing while flying in a vertibird with a minigun. It was like Call of Duty, but like nuclear. And then at last it was time to enter the Institute. Thanks to Virgil's help, I knew that I had to head straight to the CIT ruins. I thought I was here for the Corsair, but it turns out I had better plans.
I'm here to pick up an order. 2 large pepperoni and a calzone. Name is fuck you.
After taking out the Corsair Z247, great name by the way, it was time to analyze the chip and find a way into the Institute. For this, I had to return to the railroad. I'm not sure why, but the Brotherhood couldn't really help me out with this one. Virgil then hooked me up with some schematics. Is that how you say that word? Schematics. Either way, we made this super duper teleportation machine device thing, which I took directly to the Brotherhood and betrayed the railroad. Still hesitant about siding with them, but eager to see where their story would lead. At long last, I had finally arrived at the Institute. After all of these years, all of the exploration through the Commonwealth, I finally heard my son's voice again.
Hello. I wondered if you might make it here. You're quite resourceful.
Shaun was here. He was real, I think. After spending a bit of time talking to Shaun and learning as much as I possibly could about the Institute, I really wanted to believe in their mission to change the world, even if it was through creating synths and slightly terrifying sciencey stuff. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to help their cause. I didn't like how they longed for control over synths, even though they created them and they are technically machines. You had given them free will, so they should be able to pursue that. But at the same time, the idea of the Institute potentially saving the Commonwealth and spending a little bit more time with Shaun after all this effort trying to find him, it seemed worth it, but that would mean leaving everybody else behind. The Brotherhood, the Railroad, the Minutemen. I kept my promise to Virgil, delivering a serum to help cure his super mutantness, and then I made my final decision to join the Institute. As I tore through both factions and captured the synths, I couldn't help but feel dirty, like I had betrayed them, even if it were supposedly for a better cause. As I stood over the Commonwealth with Shaun, I realized that there wasn't a right answer, nor was there a correct path in this game. Every choice led to violence and war and death, and even as I sat with Shaun and decided the future of the Commonwealth, I realized that my son, who I had been searching for all this time, was dying. So did any choice really matter at this point? In my mind, I figured that if I chose to continue with the Institute as their leader, at least I would be able to dictate the path they took and make the right decisions. So it was decided. I traveled to the mass fusion building, becoming a permanent enemy of the Brotherhood of Steel, and I tore through their army of robots and put an end to both the Railroad and the Brotherhood of Steel, people who I'd spent hours with in the past, and my path became clear: to save the Commonwealth and build a better future, no matter the cost. I sat with Shaun as he left me one final time, passing over the Institute with his dying breath. I questioned whether or not I had made the right choice, and I think the best option, honestly, would have been to side with the Railroad. Canonically, I'm pretty sure it's the Brotherhood, because they prevailed in the show. They're still alive and breathing after the events of Fallout 4, but that's the beauty of Fallout. The choices we make define us, and the final cutscene the game gives us, it really speaks volumes for the journey that we've been on as a character, and how this nuclear world changed us, and how desperation defined us.
This wasn't the world I wanted, but it was the one I found myself in. The Commonwealth. My home. Ripped apart and put back together. I hoped I could find my family, cheat time, make us whole again. The way we were. But now I know. I know I can't go back. I know the world has changed. That the road ahead will be hard. This time, I'm ready. Because I know war. War never changes.
This playthrough has definitely given me an entirely new appreciation for Fallout. Even though I was never against the game to begin with, I wasn't in that band camp, I always thought it was a decent game. I don't think I've ever truly appreciated how remarkable the world, the character, and the story as a whole really were. Is Fallout 4 a perfect game? Absolutely not. Even after all of these years, there's still a bunch of bugs and glitches and tedious little things that would annoy most players, and the story has some plot holes, but it doesn't retract from how incredible my 100 plus hours replaying this game were, and weirdly how I still want to continue exploring the Commonwealth and uncover all of the secrets that still remain hidden. Thank you so much for watching my replay of Fallout 4. Once again, this is a new style of content that I wanted to try out. It's very different from the guides, tips, tricks, and tutorials that I normally make on this channel. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure you let me know, whether it's through a like on the video or a comment down below. I love your faces, you're amazing, you're beautiful, and I will catch you in the next one.